All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Lighting Controls Podcast here live at Light Fair 2025 down in Vegas. Thanks for joining us. And here today, right now, we've got two fine gentlemen from Legrand who are also sponsoring this live stream, so really appreciate the support. But also, okay, so we've got Gary Meshberg and Harold Jepsen, and you're here to talk a while now, but like, from your current perspective, like, what are the challenges that lighting control systems are facing, and what is Legrand doing in response to those challenges?
Yeah, Harold, maybe if I take this question. It's a good question because it depends on the application. When you start looking at the challenges of lighting control systems, it depends if we're looking to solve, just replace an on-off switch, or just be basic code compliant, or in a demanding or more demanding application. For example, a hospital that has various systems networked together, and they might want that on a single pane of glass, as an example. So the challenges become, from a Legrand perspective, is to say, do we have a product breadth of line that can meet a simple, an integrated room solution, network solution, building network solution to a IoT level solution. Sure. So it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
And the customer, the problem that we're ultimately trying to solve is dependent on the application.
No, totally, and I think scalability is really one of the challenges in our industry right now, because of the fact that every project has its own unique needs, and sometimes you do just need that simple swap enterprise level IoT application. And so, what technologies are you using to kind of address that scalability need?
Yeah. Nice job of building the breadth of line with products such as WattStopper, which just started off as an analog product, and then came WattStopper DLM. Incorporate wired, wireless, luminaire level lighting control, indoor, outdoor, zone-based relay panels. So again, the breadth of line, and WattStopper, of course, over the years has been really regarded as the gold standard, the street credibility of a product that's very robust, very in tune with what the market's needing, and very simple to deploy.
No, definitely, and I mean, even from a designer standpoint, like I point to WattStopper for gold standard of documentation. Like, your documentation is admirable for all of your hardware that's out there. And so I ghostwrite specs, I help manufacturers, and they sometimes go, okay, well, what do I need for documentation? I go to WattStopper, see what they have. So, I mean, you really do a good job of serving the industry with all of that content.
Yeah, and I would say, I'm on the code side of things. Codes and standards is kind of where I spend a lot of my time. And so what do you need for basic compliance? And due to the all of the requirements that there are now, and you're trying to overlap that inside of a space, you want good controllability. We now have a great ability for the user to have good dimming control inside the space. That's ubiquitous with LED. Thank you very much, LED, for that. And you overlay in there what happens when the room is occupied or unoccupied, maybe scheduled or occupancy control, but then throw in the daylight harvesting piece. You may not need a full network type system, but in many cases you need something that can do some in-room communication. Right. So making that very simple, and so if your customer is mostly targeted toward, let's be code compliant, but also make it simple for the contractor, I think it's got a great solution for that. But you can go much further beyond that to the integration piece, which kind of goes to some of the newer things that are happening.
Right. No, and I think that's a really good segue, because I mean, part of this whole thing, part of the thing that Gary and I talk about in our presentations all the time is the end user experience of the system. And so I'm hearing some really interesting things coming out from Legrand when it comes to end user experience. Because I mean, switches, keypads, sensors, like all of that stuff is pretty much tried and true at this point. But now we're seeing more elevated features, more elevated capabilities. And so what are you guys doing in Legrand to address that need?
Yeah, most recently we launched in the last couple of weeks, right, Harold?
Yep.
Is a product called i3. And the I is for i3. So it's interoperability, intelligence, and insights. So it's basically saying the lighting control systems that Legrand provides provide data. How do we harness that data for not only the lighting control systems, but other systems that are in the building?
Right.
And put that under a single pane of glass. So from what...
And single pane of glass, what you're talking about is like a touch screen or a computer screen or something.
Some user interface.
Yeah.
It could be a tablet or it could be a touch screen. And the idea is to be able to say, hey, maybe we have some fault detection on an HVAC system or some of their building system, or it's something that came as a positive or an anomaly within one of the subsystems, be able to harness that data collectively for a building or a portfolio of buildings to basically harnessing that data to provide greater insights and enhance the end user experience.
Sure. No, and so, I mean, from that perspective, I think that makes a lot of sense, because that is sort of the trend that we're seeing, especially with interoperability. We're seeing a lot of pressure from specifiers, designers, end users to try to get that interoperability, that integration capability into the system. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, where it makes sense.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of the basic
Sure.
code compliant type systems, and there's a requirement there. But when you start getting in the more demanding, and look, AI, there's a lot of talk about what's going on at the show with AI. Just attended a presentation earlier on that, and the integration side of it. So there's no doubt we're moving forward with technology. The technology inherently produces data, being able to use that data to provide greater insights to the building operation.
No, definitely. And so, like...
Well, and we're not really helping the customer if we don't realize that the building itself is an overall system, right? We've done a lot of work in what we can do with lighting, the information we can provide, but if we can't provide it across the greater ecosystem of the building, like HVAC or like emergency systems or those kind of things, and so that's something that the Legrand WattStopper i3 platform can help to provide, and we're seeing that when you look at occupied standby mode, which is a drive toward what's happening inside of the space, that usually lighting systems through occupancy detection know that and can share that with the HVAC system, and a lot of other areas. We're helping the customer more so by for him being able to see across those systems,
Right.
With that information and being able to make actionable data out of it for him.
So one of the beautiful parts about Legrand is having someone like Harold who's on point with the codes and the standards and serves on those committees and has those insights in terms of trends and marrying, which is not an easy task to do, is marrying the technology with the end user requirements, with the code to make sense of that all, and something that we can ultimately deploy right at an affordable within a budget, right? There's always budget sensitivity, but the idea having that level of expertise and marry that with the product and the technology to provide greater solutions is a nice thing to have with Harold.
No, totally. And I mean, that's one of the things that I appreciate about it, because it's that when you're specifying a system with these components, that there is a mentality when it comes to the energy code compliance. I mean, there's a lot of times where it's like, okay, is this compliant with code? But in a lot of cases with Legrand, you can really kind of know that, this was thought through, this was vetted through the energy code compliance criteria, and probably the strictest of the energy code compliances that are out there. Because, I mean, okay, Title 24 is not necessary in Boston, but if it's applicable, like if I'm meeting Title 24, I know I'm meeting Boston's standards as it is. So that's a really great resource, absolutely. As far as where this i3 can be applied to, like what is the most common type of project that you would see this being utilized in?
Yeah, I would certainly see it in buildings where you have accessibility to a good facility management, because they're the ones that are going to be able to take that data and from the actionable data be able to go out there and make a difference within the building. You can see things, they always say that once a building comes online, right, it's code compliant that day, and every day thereafter it's falling outside of that, if you will, in terms of efficiency. So the idea is to, what's taking it out of the efficiency? right? And so that platform is designed across systems in order to be able to help create some actionable things in its single pane environment for you to be able to say, hey, here's an area that maybe the daylight responsive controls is not working the way it is. Well, yeah, maybe somebody put a piece of tape over the top of the sensor, or maybe we get something black sitting underneath the sensor where before it was commissioned with something else. As an example for that. So, as a tool for facilities, buildings that want that visibility across systems, it's a marvelous platform, and especially because it already has built-in drivers to be able to connect up with all these other systems, and not just our lighting systems.
Yeah.
Other lighting systems. If you have a building, over time, how things happen.
Yeah.
And go into a building.
Well, and that's the thing. Like I always say, lighting control systems are not static entities anymore. They're living, breathing entities that change over time and need to be maintained and monitored. And so having this kind of platform really gives people accessibility, and not just to the lighting control system, but additional adjacent systems to it. And if you can leverage additional data, like if you're using D4I compliant drivers, you can get that feedback as well. And so you can really manage your project. So I see, if you have a strong facility management team, let's say, for instance, I'm designing a project and I want to implement this, like what would be the first step that I take?
Yeah, typically, so we have a network of our sales agents across the country. So generally we would say, if it's a request, well, it depends on who's asking the question, but generally we would direct that to our sales agent. And the sales agent would contact either trained and knowledgeable enough about the product itself to address the need, or pull in subject matter experts like a Harold when needed. But I want to go back to your question just to further define, in addition to what Harold was saying, that there's really 4 key vertical markets that we focus on within the building control systems silo of Legrand, and that's commercial office space. And that when you get into that I3 level of control, that's typically the larger portfolio, so the real estate folks on these commercial office spaces tend to get involved. The next one would be higher education, university, colleges, that level. Healthcare as well, so when you get into a hospital, and you can just imagine the needs of a commercial office building versus a hospital, very, very different. So you say, what's the user experience look like? It varies. And then lastly, the other one is, which is a very large booming business and growing business, is data centers. So you would think that, well, with the energy demand from a data center, that the lighting and lighting control is a small portion of that, and it is, but still, where we can help offset some of that massive load that these data centers are consuming via a more efficient, well-managed network lighting control system.
Well, and again, if you can tap into other systems, you can help that data center be better managed as well.
Exactly. So part of what the insights are, looking for anomalies, kind of what Harold was saying, he's got all of this data, and if things start to drift outside of initial spec, then it can be recognized.
Right.
Yeah, and kind of back to your question, where do I get started? You start where you've always been, and that is you design the system with the Wattstopper system, and this becomes an overlay on the top of it. So from that angle, you don't have to think about anything different about what you're trying to deploy inside the space, either to be compliant or to meet some, some aggressive maybe, owner requirements that may be there that you've got to take care of. You do that with the product, and then this comes in as an overlay on top of it, and can connect to all the other systems inside.
So is this something that I could look at a previous project that's already been completed with Legrand and layer this on top? That's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah.
So I mean, it sounds like an excellent solution, and I really appreciate you guys coming on and talking about it.
Well, we appreciate the time. It's great to be here at Light Fair with you, and appreciate all that you and the podcast are doing for us.
Oh, well, thank you. No, and I mean, I think that's the thing. We just want to raise awareness. We want people to know what's out there, because I mean, these kinds of solutions are out there. You just got to know where to look. So, again, really appreciate the time.
Enjoy being here with you. Thanks, Webb.